everyone, and welcome to the very first IstioCon. I'm Rose Salvo from the IstioCon Organizers Committee, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all today. We're delighted to have you with us to participate and share in this new event. I'd like to thank you for coming, and I'd also like to thank some key folks who have come together to turn this event from an idea into reality. And I'd also like to thank our partners. A big thank you goes out to Google Cloud, Aspen Mesh, Cisco, IBM, Red Hat, Solo.io, Tetrate, and Rancher Federal. In addition, we want to recognize all of our program committee members, organizers committee members, presenters, contributors, and our event team software guru who have all put countless hours and effort into bringing us here. But most of all, we want to thank you. Now, let's hand it over to Craig Box from Google Cloud, the Istio Technical Oversight Committee, and co-chair of IstioCon to kick off this event.
On behalf of the Istio community, I would like to welcome you to IstioCon 2021. My name is Craig Box. I work on Istio at Google Cloud, and I'm a member of the Istio Steering Committee. Let's get all the important stuff out of the way. Please look around the room and familiarize yourself with the nearest exit. And we're sorry about the quality of the coffee at this event. We very much hope to be able to do this in person next year, but we are happy that we are able to involve so many people who wouldn't otherwise be able to take part. A special hello to our community in China. We know how much you love Istio, and so we are running a 2-day program in the China time zone throughout the week. I would like to thank the organizers of this event, especially Maria and Ajamel, for pulling it all together. To our program committee, who thoughtfully evaluated over 100 submissions to build out our schedule of talks, and to the event team at Software Guru for making sure everything runs smoothly. We have an exciting 5 days ahead of us. You'll find technical talks, workshops, lightning talks, and a roadmap session by members of our Technical Oversight Committee, talking about how Istio is improving stability and Day 2 operations in 2021. We showcase the lessons learned from users running Istio in production, dive deep into features like multi-cluster and WebAssembly, and demystify topics like security and debugging. It has been my pleasure to serve as co-chair of this event, along with Lin Sun. Lin will join us soon to give a project update. Just because we're not in person doesn't mean we can't network or have fun. We have some great social hours, including activities on Gather, a live cartoonist, virtual swag bags, raffles, music, games, and more. We say that Istio was started as a collaboration between Google, IBM, and Lyft, but what does that mean exactly? We asked a few of the early members of the project to tell you the Istio story.
Istio is infrastructure that makes it easy to operate distributed systems at scale. It provides mutually authenticated and authorized encrypted communications between every endpoint. It provides automatic collection of application-level telemetry, which is the golden signals that you may have heard about from the SRE handbook. It collects latency, error rates, and overall usage of your applications automatically. It also provides a lot of powerful traffic management capabilities. And all this is provided out of the box without needing any custom code in the application.
A number of folks who are working at Google, Sven and myself included among them, spent a bunch of time trying to think about what were the next big things going to be in kind of workload and services management, and how in particular the kind of world of enterprise applications were going to be modernized, and how they were going to be brought into what was the cloud native hotness at the time.
We had been working on a product called Cloud Endpoints at Google that was really an API management product focused on north-south communications. But in talking to customers, a lot of them were actually using it for east-west use cases inside their organizations. And we had open sourced part of the product, but they wanted more. They wanted all of it open sourced. They wanted to be able to use it in all their different environments, and they wanted more east-west features out of it. Meanwhile, we'd been talking to the Kubernetes team which had a lot of features in their backlog that were basically features Google Production has, but Kubernetes doesn't, around security, around observability, around managing this application level flow of traffic.
So Sven and I were having a lot of discussions about how we could, take what we had learned from that project and, bring it into the community and really kind of drive, some of those values that we were seeing, around observability, around policy, around security, and traffic management and control to a much broader kind of class of applications. Certainly much broader than what we were targeting internally at Google.
And so in talking to these customers and to the Kubernetes team and Kubernetes community members, we realized there was a big opportunity to deliver something that offered all these capabilities in a consistent way. And so that's how Istio was born.
So there were a lot of ideas kicking around and a lot of meetings, and we were looking at a lot of projects. There were projects that were already doing service mesh-like things externally as open source. One of which was a project being built out of IBM, which had basically built a kind of service mesh-like control plane that sat on top of Nginx and had some of the features that we were looking to build. But for a variety of reasons, we didn't think that the solution exactly hit the sweet spot for what we were looking to do. But anyway, we reached out to the team at IBM, and seeing as there was a KubeCon coming up, we all arranged to kind of get together and meet and chat and see if there was some opportunity for working together. As it turned out, there was a huge opportunity for working together.
IBM had been building, as part of our cloud, container platforms and microservice architectures for a long time, at least back to 2014. As we started to deploy large-scale microservice systems, we saw a need to connect those microservices with a smart network fabric that allowed us to control the interactions between components. IBM Research and my public cloud team created the Amalgamate project to build out what became the notion of a service mesh. Amalgamate was initially focused primarily on traffic management, including flexible routing, controlled A/B rollouts, circuit breakers, and fault injection. We wanted to build a framework that took advantage of the extensibility of Kubernetes and used the notion of sidecars to allow this smart mesh to be introduced without developers having to change their code. In the fall of 2016 at KubeCon, we connected with the team at Google, who were building a very similar framework focused mostly on observability and security. We decided to join forces, and Istio was born.
The other big thing that was going on at the time was, Envoy was just starting to come out as an open source project. We had gotten wind of it a couple of weeks before it was going to be publicly announced, and we were doing technical evaluations of it. And there were a couple of things about Envoy that made it particularly attractive, when we compared it to, say, other proxy solutions that were in the market. The biggest of which was obviously that it came with an API that allowed a centralized control plane to control the behavior of the proxy and to dynamically update it, and to do so very rapidly. So I reached out to Matt, and we discussed what we wanted to build.
We had developed Envoy at Lyft, and Envoy had been in production at Lyft for over a year prior to open sourcing. And actually, before we open sourced the code, I think through a gRPC meetup, the folks at Google had become aware of Envoy, and we had a bunch of meetings and showed the code to lots of folks at Google. And in a pretty short period of time, this great partnership was born.
Matt was pretty enthusiastic. We had to do some due diligence about performance and scale and kind of the viability technically of all this kind of stuff. So we worked on building out a prototype with a control plane, and Matt, very graciously put in a bunch of work to help us, answer some of the more kind of bread and butter performance and technical questions about Envoy and how it would compare against other proxies in the market.
Google's initial contributions to Istio were really based on the work we had done in cloud endpoints. So we focused on security, on how to set up a strong encrypted, authenticated, and authorized channel between endpoints. We focused on policy enforcement, making sure that only the right services could talk to a particular service, and on telemetry collection, making sure we were we are collecting those golden signals, collecting logs, integrating tracing, all that kind of good stuff. Meanwhile, in the networking space, IBM had brought in a lot of expertise based on the Amalgamate project. So they focused on building out the initial networking implementation and the networking APIs.
The thing that I find most unique about Istio is how it enables these rich interactions between services without changing anything about how the services themselves are built and deployed. Part of the goal of microservices is to enable different teams to build, deploy, and operate each service independently. But real systems are usually a combination of services working together. Istio, through the Envoy sidecar mesh concept and a rich programmable control plane, enables all of these interactions to be observed, secured, and controlled transparently. And because it is natively integrated into Kubernetes, you don't have to learn a new system to know how to add Istio to your environment.
I like this concept of networking for application developers or application owners. Sometimes we segment those two things. But if you look at the world of networking and networking products and solutions out there, right, they're very much targeted at the IT infrastructure owner, the network owner, the chief security officer, the people administering the firewall rules and the security policies and IP allocation and things of that nature, and all super useful infrastructure. But none of it really targeted at the application developer or the needs that they have. And so, if you're an application developer and you were thinking from first principles, what would I like a network to be able to do to make my life easier? That's how I like to approach the problem. And so that's kind of how I think about what Istio is trying to solve, is to give tools and controls to developers of applications so that they can have the network do what they want it to do, right? Whether they want it to provide some reliability concern facilities, whether they want it to provide security, or whether they want to be able to control who can talk to the software that I write and who can't. And be able to do that in a more devolved way, right? A lot of the kind of traditional IT infrastructure is very centrally managed, and there's not a lot of control that's devolved down to the application owner. And so Istio kind of presents a model for doing that in a way that doesn't put the application owner and the infrastructure admin in conflict, right? It gives them a way to layer those concerns so that they can both get what they want.
We have lots of people that are focusing on building microservice architectures, and it's just too hard right now. We live in a polyglot world where people are trying to develop their architectures with lots of different languages, and there's all of these common problems that people face in terms of observability and networking. And having a sidecar out-of-band proxy allows us to push a lot of functionality from protocols to security to observability to policy.
Istio really created this idea of a transparent service mesh and made it real.
Istio is open source software. You can download and install it yourself at absolutely no cost. Later on, Lin is going to show you how we've made great improvements in the experience of installing and managing Istio. Istio is also the engine that powers a number of service mesh and developer products: Google's Anthos, Red Hat's OpenShift Service Mesh, VMware's Tanzu Service Mesh. And with services like IBM's Cloud Code Engine and the DigitalOcean app platform, many people will interact with Istio without ever knowing it. Then there are people who offer hosted Kubernetes environments with easy installation and management of Istio. No other service mesh comes close to this level of industry support. Some people have gone a step further and started companies based on Istio. Let's hear from a few of them now.
I've been in open source for the last 8 or 9 years, and really a project starts to feel mainstream when businesses start to depend on it every day. Be it businesses like us at Tetrate who are building solutions on top of Istio, or end organizations who are running their infrastructure on Istio. And Kubernetes saw this similar wave of adoption. We saw with Kubernetes from 2014 all the way to now how businesses are depending on Kubernetes to run their infrastructure. I think Istio, since we launched it in May of 2017 at GlueCon, is seeing a similar wave of adoption.
When I started solo almost 4 years ago, the market was so confused. Every day there were new announcements of a new service mesh, and our customers were extremely afraid. They were terrified to bet on the wrong one, the losing one.
There were three main criteria that we evaluated when we decided to build a product on Istio. First, we wanted to ensure that the data plane proxy is lightweight, performant, cloud native with dynamic reconfigurability, and allows extensions in multiple languages. Secondly, we wanted the architecture to allow policy enforcement as close to the workloads as possible, which Istio does via sidecar proxy architecture. Third, but not the least, we wanted to work with a thriving open source community where we could not only contribute code and features, but we could bring our expertise from service providers, enterprises, and networking and help shape the direction of the project. In our evaluations, Istio was always at the top of the list in all the three categories, which is why we chose to work with Istio and build our product on top.
We built Glue product suite to help ease the adoption and the day two operation of Service Mesh. And build tool like WebAssembly Hub for building and distributing WebAssembly Envoy extension. And Glue Portal for allowing the developer to publish their API.
My goal with Istio was to really make it possible to run easily everywhere. And frankly, to make it boring, and it just works. And that's why I started Tetrate, and at Tetrate we built our platform called Tetrate Service Bridge.
Aspen Mesh is an enterprise-grade service mesh built on open source Istio. We take the capabilities provided by Istio, package it up in a form factor that's easily consumable by enterprises and service providers.
The market is not confused anymore. We are today supporting hundreds of customers who run Istio in production environment.
To support our ecosystem and make sure they have a stake in the project, we made two governance changes last year. First, Google transferred the Istio trademarks to a new organization, the Open Usage Commons, to provide neutral, independent oversight of the marks. This ensures that the trademark is open, just like the code and operation of the project. Secondly, we opened up the Istio Steering Committee. Previously, membership was allocated to companies proportional to their contribution to the project at its inception. We still think that it's important to have direction from those who are invested most in the project's success, so we are now looking at annual contributions, with a cap to make sure that no one vendor can control the project. We've also added elected seats to represent the Istio community, and we now have members representing 7 different companies. Steering's job is to do things like help organize conferences and write blog posts, so thank you to all my colleagues on Steering for your continued support. I asked some of our contributors to tell us what they like about working with the Istio community.
My name is Iris Ding. I'm working as a cloud software engineer at Intel in China.
Yo, my name is Dita Prepa, and I go to high school at Mission San Jose High in Fremont.
I'm Zhonghu Xu, an open source engineer from Hawaii Cloud.
Hello, my name is Jacob Delgado, and I'm from Aspen Mesh.
My name is Limi Wang. I am a co-lead for Istio Security Working Group.
The Istio community is very inclusive and welcome contributions from different individuals or companies.
I started working on Istio because, quarantine was getting pretty boring and I wanted something fun to do outside of school, and learning a new open source project seemed like a great way to kill time.
I feel that the best part of an open source project is that you can hear opinions from people coming from different backgrounds and partner with people who have the same interest and enthusiasm.
Everybody has been a joy to work with, and people are more than willing to, collaborate.
As an independent developer, I didn't have any affiliation, so I needed all the help I could get. And this community has been so amazing at providing constructive feedback and helping me out one-on-one when I start work on something. And to that I say, thank you, community.
From a project perspective, it is honestly very difficult to keep track of all of the work that people are doing. There's so many contributors to Envoy right now that it blows my mind.
To get started to contribute to Istio, I would firstly recommend reading our contributor guide under Istio community. and then get a quick understanding of Istio community architecture and operation.
You can get started by identifying and fixing bugs, or making comments to the existing code, API, and documentation. Working group meetings are also good forums for you to participate in the technical discussions and understand the roadmaps.
There are so many features Istio provided, so you can just pick up one that you are interested and hands-on to try it. Join the Istio Slack and the Istio GitHub, submit PRs, issues, or discussions. Start small and keep contributing. You will find working with the Istio community is fun and rewarding.
I look forward to seeing more and more people joining Istio community.
It's now my pleasure to turn over to my co-chair, Lin Sun, to give an update on Istio, the project. Thank you for attending IstioCon, and thank you for being a part of our community.
I'm looking forward for engaging and educating IstioCon, and I'm hoping to see you all in person soon. For the meantime, stay positive and test negative.
Thank you for having me. It's been exciting to be part of the Istio community for the last 3 years and help organize the first ever IstioCon 2021. Have a wonderful conference, everyone.
I wish you a great IstioCon, and I sincerely hope to see some of you in person soon in a COVID-free, safe world. Thank you so much.
I really hope you all enjoy the conference. I'm super excited. I know we're all sad that we can't get together in person, but I am very happy to welcome you all to IstioCon. I look forward to talking to you virtually in the rooms, waving from great distances through screens, etc. And very much looking forward to it.
Thank you for having me at this virtual conference.
I'm really looking forward to collaborating with you in the community.
Well, that's the way to kick off an event. Thanks to Craig and all the folks in that video. Next up, we've got Lin Sun from Solo.io, who is our other event co-chair, and she'll be joining us to talk through our next segment.
Hey folks, Lin here. On behalf of the Istio community, I'm super excited to give you an update of the Istio project today. I'm currently the director of open source with Solo.io. Previously, I worked for IBM Cloud. My involvement with Istio starts in 2017. I'm currently a maintainer and owner of the Istio project. I also serve on the technical oversight committee. I truly believe in innovation and explore new things. Currently, I have 207 IBM patents under my name. And last year, I pushed myself to write a book because I never wrote a book before. Istio Explained was born to help you get started with Service Mesh. Let's start with Istio community. The number of contributors has grown over the last 12 months. We now have 350 plus contributing companies, 500 plus PR authors, and close to 2,000 contributors. That's really amazing growth. GitHub star has been commonly used to measure a project's popularities. And you can see Istio has continuous steady growth on GitHub stars. Very good sign. In March 2020, the new stack has published service mesh related technology adoptions. And you can see back then for 2019 and 2018, Istio was leading the way. Last year, close to November-December timeframe, CNCF has done a cloud native survey. As part of the Cloud Native survey, Service Mesh was part of it. Out of all the users who answered the Service Mesh portion, 36% said they are using Service Mesh in production. And out of these 36%, Istio was clearly leading the way. Istio is probably close or even more than the next two competitors combined. I love Istio in many aspects. The fact I've worked on this project for this long and shows how much I love the project. I love the rich ecosystem. I love the amazing collaboration among the contributors in the community. But in my heart, what I like most about Istio is the continuous innovation and transformation with our users in mind. Since we're talking about users, I like to quickly talk through the three key personas we believe Service Mesh have. Developers who are the owners of the service, they write code for the service, they deploy and operate the services. The platform owner who sets the overall Service Mesh strategy and onboarding strategy for each of the services. They guide each of the services on how they should adopt Service Mesh, and they observe what's going on within the Service Mesh platforms and pin down which services may have problems. If you're lucky that you have a cloud provider that operates Istio for you, the mesh operator could essentially become your cloud provider, so you don't have to worry about installation and upgrade Istio yourself. Istio spend a lot of time to simplify our installation experience. Within one single command, you can install Istio and then specify which profile and customization you want. At the end of the install, you can also verify the success of your installation. When you need to upgrade from versions to a newer version, run IstioCon upgrade. It also gives you the warnings that you should pay attention to before you upgrade. We realize our user love Helm, so we added back the support for Helm 3 so that if you are a Helm shopper, you can continue to use Helm to install Istio. We've spent a lot of time to simplify the operator experience for Istio. Instead of managing multiple control plane components, you can now manage one single control plane component called Istio-D. First, we removed the mixer component, then the Gaily components, moved their functionality to pilot. Then we moved the injector functionality to pilot. And because of what user said, pod security policy was so hard to set up, we moved the functionality from node agent to pilot agent. We then moved the Citadel functionality into pilot, and pilot become Istio-D, which is the single control plane components for you. We introduced a new extension model. If you know Istio from the very beginning, we have a mixer component that does authentication, authorization, and telemetry and extension. Throughout the year, we moved the authentication and authorization into Envoy proxy. So Mixer is no longer on the request flow and the proxy can make that decision. We then moved the telemetry component into the Istio proxy. And then we decided we want to give users, continue give user ways to extend Istio without Mixer. This is when WebAssembly was born, and vendors like Solo has WebAssembly Hub that enable developers to easily produce WebAssembly plugins and publish WebAssembly plugins to the hub. We also simplify Istio multi-cluster model. If you were early users of Istio, we have replicate control plane model and share control plane model. Super confusing. But now, based on your needs of high availability of control plane, you can decide whether you want to run Istio-D in one cluster or in each of the cluster of your multi-cluster environment. Depends on whether you have flat network or multi-network. You can choose to run your Istio ingress gateway. And when service A from cluster 1 needs to call service B in cluster 2, you can simply add a mirror service to help with DNS resolution. And with the community innovating on DNS proxy, the service B mirror shouldn't be needed in the near future when DNS proxy becomes stable. We also simplified VM virtual machine onboarding experiences, concepts such as workload group to represent a deployment of services running on VM, and workload entry to represent VM services as a Kubernetes pod really help users to onboarding their services running on the VM. DNS proxy helps to automatically resolve mesh names to mesh IP, really help out resolving the services running on the VM. We also introduced identity bootstrapping, health check, and auto registration for the services running on the VM. This really helps to integrating and onboarding the services running on the VM to participate as part of the mesh. We realize a lot of our users are on Kubernetes today. When they start to adopt service mesh, the Istio resources may be too daunting for them. The community has started to adopt Kubernetes Service API. By adopting Kubernetes Service API, if you are users on Kubernetes, it would provide an easy transition for you from moving Kubernetes to Istio Service Mesh. If you are using other service meshes who also happen to implement the Kubernetes Service API, it can also be easily transformed to use Istio by using the same service API. We introduced the protocol declaration in Kubernetes service descriptors so that our developers have an easy way to declare protocols in their Kubernetes service YAML file. We've also started to transform informal APIs to formal APIs as more and more users are leveraging the informal API. External authorization is a good example, where we see a lot of users using it through Envoy filters, and now we are transforming it into a formal Istio API. We realize things are not going to go smooth every single time, and you need to be able to troubleshooting what might go wrong. We introduced the analyze command where you can analyze individual Istio resources a single namespace, or the entire cluster for what might go wrong. The describe command really help you to understand what are the things in your deployment and services that Istio care about. The bug report helps you to easily report bugs and collect all the information required for the bug report. I know sometimes you might be thinking, gosh, you have too many things. You guys are really innovating too fast. Then I can really keep track of. I know exactly how you feel. And to be honestly, I feel the same way sometimes. This is where the community introduced the feature process. The feature process was introduced to help the project slow down. Every single feature, when it needs to be introduced or promoted to the next stage, are tracked at the Istio enhancement repository. There are formal checklists and approval required for each of the feature promotion, whether you are promoting it from experimental to alpha or to beta or to stable. You need to get workgroup leads approval and also the TOC member approval. You need to have design documentation, Istio.io documentation, test automation, a lot of requirements for different stages. I'm really excited to see this in place, and we can make Istio as mature and as stable for you. Over 3 years ago, I was porting the most simple Kubernetes application called Guestbook onto Istio. It's a really simple application that has 2 or 3 services, but it took me more than 1 day to get that application moved to Istio. I forgot to declare the protocol, I forgot to label the deployment, and troubleshooting was super hard. It took me a long time and a lot of frustration. I would like to share a journey of me running Istio with a random application I grabbed from the internet. I'm going to do a search on awesome Kubernetes demo application. I can type, and I find out this link that has interesting Kubernetes demo application from William from VMware. And I looked at every single application here, and I landed on this Stan's robot shop. You know, my family loves robot. My kids have been doing robotics for a few years. So I decided to run this shop on my Kubernetes cluster and also trying to run it on Istio. Look, this is a perfect example. This has like 10 microservices, and they're using different languages. So let's go ahead and see it running. This is my cluster in IBM Cloud, Lin Istio 1. As you can see, I have 3 worker nodes, and my cluster is perfect. It's healthy. It's on Kubernetes 117. This is my CLI, IstioCon pointing to my cluster. I'm going to install Istio using the demo profile because I'm doing a demo. As you can see, one simple command, it could get you install the Istio D control plane, the ingress and egress gateway. Let's take a look at what's being installed. Look, within 16 seconds, we actually get 20 seconds. We get everything running, including Istio D. Now I'm putting ads on my cluster. So all the add-on component, Grafana, Kayali, JGUN premises are laid out. Next, I'm installing RobotShop into the RobotShop namespace using Helm. And let's take a look at the installation. So some of the services already reach running, a few are still coming up with running. All right, as you can see, the application is running and it has a load balancer IP. It's listening on port 80 and 80, and Redis has a persistent volume deployed on IBM Cloud. Let's go ahead and visit the RobotShop. Okay, I like this robot. Let's go ahead and check it out. I can select the country, Australia. I want to ship to Sydney. And, I'm going to calculate the cost. And let's go ahead and ship it out. So as you can see, this is a simple application. It has 10 or so microservices, and I got it running on Kubernetes. So next, I'm going to try to label the RobotShop namespace with Istio injection. And I'm going to rolling restart the deployment so that the sidecar can be injected to each of my microservices. So after a few minutes, you can see all the services have the sidecar injected. Now let's take a look, what have I gained, by injecting the sidecars. From the Kayali visualization dashboard, I'm going to enable the security badges and traffic animation. These are two of my favorite configuration. And now I'm going to check out the R2D2 robot, my kid's favorite. And we're going to try to ship to the United States this time. And I live in Raleigh. So let's go ahead and calculate the cost for that. As you can see, the traffic is secure. The green traffic is HTTP, but what's not secure is the web service from the outside to through the outside to the web. So we're going to configure Istio gateway resource and virtual service to solve that problem. So in my cloud, I have this host with trusted key and certs. So I'm just plug that into my Istio gateway resource, and I config with it the slash prefix. Please redirect the traffic to the web service, the robot web service 8080 port number. So now you can see I'm visiting, the traffic is secure, and I'm visiting using the host name provided by my cloud, NLB. And the traffic from Istio Ingress Gateway to the web service of the RobotShop is also secured. Interesting robots here. So I'm not sure if every single traffic is mutual TLS strict. What I'm going to do is enforce mutual TLS strict on the global mesh. Now, as I'm shopping, I can see, mesh-wide mutual TLS is enabled. Look at that. Thank you, Kayali, for telling me that. Now let's look at the Istio configurations. This is the gateway configuration that I deployed early on. And this is the virtual service that defines the routing behavior from the gateway to my web service in the RobotShop. Let's take a look at the Grafana dashboard. I'm so excited. I'm getting all these metrics All right, so these are the default Istio dashboards. Now I'm looking at the service dashboard. It shows me like all the data, client and server successful rate. It shows me incoming request and response code from both the client and server side. It shows me the traffic's mutual TLS. So a lot of data just by injecting the sidecar, and also enable mutual TLS to make sure all the communication are through mutual TLS. As you can see, through minimum effort, I was able to port one of the random microservices from the internet, Robot Shop, to Kubernetes, and then to Service Mesh. And I immediately gained layer 7 visibilities into each of my services. And also, I ensure the traffic is secure from the edge Istio ingress gateway to each of my microservices. We started to see Netflix OSS in 2015. Istio was born 2017 along with the first generation of Linkd. It's called Linkd Conduit. How many of you were at KubeCon North American 2017 in Austin? I remember Clayton Coleman from Red Hat was on stage giving a keynote where he predicted that 2018 is the year of service mesh, and he was absolutely right. 2018, Console Connect, Superglue, and Linkd 2.0 was born. In 2019, to me, it's also a year of service mesh because projects like Gray Matter, projects like SMI, projects like Kuma and Traffic and Meshery were all born that year. A lot of growth and new projects in these 2 years. 2020 is the year of Istio innovation. It's the year Istio community really huddled together to innovate based on the user's needs, to simplify users' journey onto Istio. From installation to operation, the control plane, to extend Istio and grow the service mesh from single cluster to multi-cluster to services running on the VM, and also to help our user to troubleshooting and onboarding their services. We would like to invite you to hear key user stories and journeys with Istio from various customers this week at IstioCon. There are some big names on the slides, but we actually have way more users talking about their Istio journey than what's here. I want to spend a minute to thank each of our users who is spending time to be on stage and share their journey with us. I know they're going to make an impact because this is a year of Istio adoption for our users. Thank you for the conference organizers and program committees. Without you guys, the conference would not be possible. Thank you for our wonderful contributors, our users and presenters today and this week. Without you, we wouldn't be having IstioCon. The people who participate and contribute to Istio are really what's making the community special.
Thanks to Lynn for that keynote. On behalf of the organizers committee, we'd like to thank each of the people who helped put these presentations together, but we would especially like to thank all of you, our Istio community. As Lynn said so well, without you, we wouldn't be here. So please enjoy the conference.